The purpose of this session is to give an introduction to theme-centered interaction, which is a psychological model which was developed by Dr. Ruth C. Kahn, a Jewish psychotherapist and a humanistic psychologist. She was also an educationist who was able to bring about a shift from teaching to learning in education. When we think about the Indian system of education, I would like to mention one reference which was made by Professor Eshpal, the former chairman of UGC. In his report, Learning Without Burden, he makes this statement: in our system of education, a lot is taught, but little is learned. If you look at the system of education which is prevalent in our country, it goes without saying that there is an emphasis on subjects, on learning a lot, but then on teaching a lot. But when it comes to actual learning, how much is imbibed by the students is something which we need to analyze and understand. And in theme-centered interaction, which is what I will be speaking about during this session, is a pedagogical approach which was developed by Dr. Ruth C. Kahn. This approach, as I said earlier, marks a shift from teaching to learning, from a teacher-dominated classroom to a student-centered and also a learning-centered classroom. In TCI methodology, process is given emphasis. Of course, product of a learning experience is important, but in TCI, process is given importance or equal importance as is the product of learning. In general, we can say that theme-centered interaction is an approach which is experiential in its with regard to its process. It is inclusive in nature in that it can bring in, within a large framework, it can bring in concepts, techniques and tools from different other methodologies and incorporate it seamlessly into this framework. And it is holistic in that it takes into account the individual in his totality. It is not a lopsided approach where the cognitive aspect of the child is given emphasis, is addressed. Instead, the cognitive and the affective, or the person in toto, is addressed as a learner in this methodology called theme-centered interaction, or TCI. Dr. Ruth Kahn had to stay away from her home country. She lived in the United States for quite a period of time, and during that time she learned psychoanalysis and she became a psychoanalyst. And she got acquainted with stalwarts in the field of psychology like Carl Rogers, Fritz Perls, who is the exponent of who developed Gestalt, and she was a very influential figure in the humanistic psychology movement, in the United States. The theme-centered interaction as a method, it evolved through her workshops, which mainly the workshops which she conducted on transference issues, and this workshop was mainly attended by therapists and counselors mostly. In fact, based on her experience in TCI, and also based on her experience in psychoanalysis, she realized that the tools and methods of psychoanalysis is applicable in the case of therapy and for counseling, and it can help and facilitate the healing of people. This realization confirmed her work in the field, but then she was uncomfortable because this was helping only a very few number of people. And as one of her books, in one of her books, she titled the book like this: From the Therapy of One to Education of Many. For her, the couch of psychoanalysis was too small. From the couch, she wanted to move to the community. She wanted the community to benefit out of this methodology. And so, from psychoanalysis, she gradually developed theme-centered interaction, which can be applied to a group. And she started her workshops in the United States, and gradually, this TCI as a concept, as a model, evolved, and the conceptual aspects of this model was fine-tuned. If we look at the major concepts in theme-centered interaction, TCI is a value-based approach. There is a value system which underlies theme-centered interaction. It is basically the humanistic value system. And the value base of TCI is encapsulated in 3 axioms. And this axiomatic stance, which is value-based, which is pro-people, and which supports the growth and self-actualization of an individual, stands as the basis, as the ethical, moral basis of theme-centered interaction as a method. The first axiom of TCI says that human being is a psychobiological unity and a part of the universe. He is autonomous and interdependent at the same time. This pithy statement is loaded with meaning. Human being is a psychobiological unity. So the biological aspect of the human being and the mental aspect, which includes the mind and the body, this brings together the mind, the emotional aspect of the person, the bodily aspect of the person together. And human being in the TCI process, human being is seen as a psychobiological unity. And at the same time, when he is an entity in itself and he is a unity in itself, he is also part of the universe. So in short, the first axiom encapsulates the ambivalence between the freedom and autonomy of an individual and the dependence and interdependence which he has to experience as a part of the universe. So human being, on the one hand, he is free and autonomous, but at the same time, on the other side, he is interdependent with the universe. So the growth of a person, when we look at the growth of a person, we should understand that it happens in this ambivalence, the ambivalence of autonomy, of freedom, and also of interdependence. The second axiom, as I said, the value system of theme-centered interaction is contained in the 3 axioms. And the second axiom speaks about life. It says, reverence or respect is due to everything living and to its growth. So life is respected, growth is respected. So every type of life, every aspect of life, which we see and experience in nature, not only that of human beings, is respected. And reverence is given to its growth. So when this value system is accepted, every student is seen as a bunch of possibilities for growth. So in a classroom situation, we find that there is no student who is left out, and in that sense, the theme-centered interaction as a pedagogical method becomes an inclusive method. The third axiom speaks about free will. It is linked to the first axiom, but then it speaks about another aspect of the autonomy of the individual. It says that free will of an individual occurs within conditional internal and external boundaries. Every person, he lives, or he is born in a background, his family background, his social, economic, political, cultural background is there, and when he grows up, he finds himself free, but at the same time he is restricted by many things. And these restrictions can have internal manifestations and also external manifestations. In terms of internal manifestations, it could be a poor educational background which has inflicted a lack of freedom and limiting thinking which the person has developed, or it could be the result of certain conditionings which he was subjected to during his childhood, or at some stage of his life, and which again affects his thinking and behavior and possibilities in life. So we find, as if we look at it from the pedagogical point of view, we find as teachers, we find students in classrooms who do not have real freedom to be themselves, to come out and express themselves, to be free, to feel free and relate with people, even to ask a question. Some students, they need permission, or they need to break a lot of barriers and come out before they actually emerge themselves as a human being. So this is one aspect of it, the internal boundaries which a child or a student or a person experiences. But at the same time, there are external boundaries. Now we have social restrictions. There are communities and the belief systems of communities which can pose restrictions for an individual. There are cultural restrictions which is actually part of the thinking of so it could be part of the thinking of a society even. So this is also these things also can form restrictions for a person. So the freedom of the individual is actually restricted within these internal and external boundaries. But then TCI says expansion or breaking or overcoming or tiding over these difficulties or these restrictions is possible. And so in that sense, TCI brings in a possibility of breaking free, of emancipation of the individual. So in this aspect, we can see that when we go further, we'll find that in TCI methodology, when it is applied to a classroom situation, we find themes are developed, themes which are relevant, which are connected to the life of a person, or in the case of a classroom situation, which are connected to the life of a student or of a learner, are formulated in terms by the facilitator of the classroom, and this facilitates the emancipation, the freedom, emancipation of the individual, and that happens by the development of a critical consciousness in the individual of the limitations, and supporting them in the group process to break free of that. So these three axioms, the first one which speaks about the psychobiological unity of the individual and his interdependence to the universe. The second axiom which speaks about reverence for life and its growth, and the third axiom which emphasizes the possibility of breaking free of the internal and external barriers which a person faces using or applying his own free will. So these three axioms contain the value base of this particular methodology, and this could be applied in different contexts. As in our, we are speaking about its application in the educational scenario, but then at the same time this can be applied in management, in organizational development, in the sector of counseling, or it could be even seen as a way of life for an individual. Now going further, there are two postulates or practical tools which can be used, which emerges from the three axioms. So the first postulate is be your own chairperson. So being one's own chairperson means an individual. It's actually an invitation to the individual. It's a call to be autonomous, to be free, to exercise the freedom and autonomy of the individual. It invites a person to become aware of himself, his thinking patterns, his needs, his expectations, and what is happening outside, to become aware of what is happening outside, the influences which come from outside, the kind of interactions he has with the external world, and the like. So the person is invited to be aware and to see every opportunity, every experience as an opportunity to take decisions. An encounter with a person, an encounter with a situation, an encounter with a new idea, a new book, each of these or every experience of this kind can be seen as an opportunity for the individual to take a decision. So that is the core which is implied in the postulate, be your own or be one's own chairperson. It is easily said than done, because this is the challenge which is posed before every individual who wants to be himself or herself. The second postulate is disturbances and strong involvements have precedence. This again, it's connected to the first one, but it has a different angle. This is about how we deal with problems which set in our lives. This is how we deal with conflicts in our life. This is how we deal with confusions which we come across in our life. So, and this requires, again, we need to give attention to it, attention to a problem or attention to a situation which creates a confusion in us, or a disturbance. It could be an emotional disturbance or an intellectual disturbance, or it could be a disturbance in terms of a relationship, or it could be a disturbance in terms of a barrier which comes in between you and the goal which you seek to attain. So any disturbance which you face need to be given the importance which it deserves. We have an expression in English which says, we brush something under the carpet. So in TCI or in a team-centered interaction situation or in a group process like that, there is no brushing under the carpet. Now, we don't keep anything secret or anything anything hidden. So we bring it into the open, we address it, we see that as an opportunity for growth. We see that as an opportunity for learning. And that is what happens when we see disturbances and strong involvements as the second postulate. Now there is one more concept which I would like to introduce before I close the session. That is the basic determinants of a group process in team-centered interaction. Now we speak about a TCI triangle, which is an equilateral triangle with each angle named as I, which is the individual, the second one as V, which is the group, and the third one as it. It is the task at hand. It is the task or the common concern or the common project for which the group has come together, or the individuals have come together and formed a group to achieve this particular common concern or common goal. And this I, as there are several individuals. For example, in the case of a classroom, we find a group of students coming in, and each person is respected as an individual. Individual I's come together. Every person, a psychobiological unity with his past, his biographical experiences, his intentions, his desires, aspirations, and such people, different people, they come together as I's. And when they come together with a common concern or a common goal called it, they form into a different entity, a group entity. We speak about synergy, a group coming together, and that is the area where we speak about interpersonal communication, interpersonal relationships, dynamics of relating, conflicts, cooperation. These are some issues which we deal with at the V level. So in a group situation, we have I, we have we, and also we have the task. And these three aspects in TCI we say are equally important. And around this triangle we find a circle, which encompasses the whole triangle, and we call it the globe or the environment. So any group occurs within an environment, and each group contains these three aspects: the individual, the group, and the task for which they come together. All these four, when we respect all these four aspects or all these four determinants of a group process, what happens in the group is called living learning. And this term living learning is very important because it goes against or to understand it, maybe we go via negativa. If we look at the opposite of it, it is dead learning. And I think this is exactly what Professor Eshpal was mentioning. That is how I started this session. Professor Eshpal was mentioning about a lot is taught, but a little is learned. And he was in that report he is actually mentioning about this kind of dead learning, which has become the order of the day with regard to our system of education. And TCI as a methodology, as a pedagogical approach, poses a new option, a new possibility before the educational scene of India, I would say, or of Kerala, which can be seen as a possibility of moving away from this dead learning, where individuals are seen as objects, and there is an element of competition which is rampant, which is live in a classroom situation. From there we can move towards a system of education, an approach of education where learning becomes a living process. Every individual is respected, the group is respected, and a disturbance which comes in the group is addressed with equal respect. And every concern or every task is connected with the life of the person, and we go for an inclusive, experiential and learning oriented approach in teaching. So that is a possibility which TCI puts forward, or living learning is a possibility which team-centered interaction as a pedagogical approach puts forward. The purpose of, and again, if we look at this methodology, we can say that it doesn't remain within the classroom setting. It is not contained, or it is not constrained by the four walls of the classroom. Instead, it goes beyond. And when TCI method is applied, we find that the classroom teaching process becomes more than just a transfer of ideas from the teacher to the student, or more than just a discovery of ideas, but it becomes a process of inculcation of values. It becomes a process of citizenship training, because the basic value system of TCI is akin to, or it is very much connected to, the democratic principles of our society. So TCI methodology applied in the classroom means that we are actually training our students to become better citizens of tomorrow. And we know that the future of a country is formed in a classroom. And so that becomes a responsibility of the teacher to see that the students who pass out of the classroom turns out into good citizens. And in that sense, when marginalized people or people who are disadvantaged are also given a possibility to emerge themselves, to free themselves from limitations, and also to become good citizens of a country. In that sense, team-centered interaction can also be seen as a socially just pedagogy. So this is this session was actually attempted to give an introduction to team-centered interaction, which is a humanistic psychology-based pedagogical model, which was developed by Dr. Ruth C. Kahn, a Jewish psychoanalyst turned educationalist. She developed it in the background of the Nazi regime, and she wanted to fight against the authoritarian thinking of the Nazi regime. But then, even now, even today, we find Hitlerization happening in societies, and that brings up the relevance of team-centered interaction as a pedagogy which is democratic, inclusive, experiential, and socially just. So this is actually just an introduction, and I hope you will look into more of team-centered interaction-based literature and experience TCI workshops, so that you get a first-hand experience of TCI. I wish you all the best on that. Thank you.